My son ghosted me for 2 whole years, then hit me up out of the blue demanding 50 grand for his wedding just so he could impress some fancy in-laws and look like he came from money. I told him no. 2 days later, his fiancée sent me this official-looking document spelling out exactly how I was supposed to act, what I could wear, and even ordering me to straight-up lie about who I was. So I didn't argue. I printed it out and used it to blow up the whole fake fairy tale they were trying to build. The old oak table in my living room vibrated right at 7 o'clock, just as the evening light was fading outside. I stared at the glowing screen with a knot in my stomach. There it was, a name I hadn't seen in 732 days, Lucas. In all that dead silence, there'd been no Merry Christmas texts, no birthday calls, not even a quick, "How's your knee doing after my surgery last winter?" Nothing but radio silence. I picked up, but didn't say hello right away. I just stood there in my quiet apartment in Boston's Back Bay, listening to the steady tick of the hallway clock. "Mom, you there?" Lucas's voice came through, rushed and demanding zero apology for the 2-year freeze-out. "We're getting married in June." Sarah and I finally set the date. Her dad's this big-shot lawyer with an exclusive firm downtown. We booked a venue right near the public garden. It's got to be perfect, you get that right. I ran my finger along the smooth tabletop. "That's news, Lucas. But why are you telling me now, after 2 years of nothing?" "Come on, don't make this difficult," he shot back, impatient. "We need $50,000 right away for the catering deposit. That's just the start. The whole thing's running around 200 grand. Sarah's dad expects my family to chip in. I'm working there now as an associate, but this money pretty much guarantees me a shot at partner later. It's about my whole reputation here, don't you get it?" A sharp clarity hit me like a slap. "Reputation? You haven't had a family for 2 years, Lucas. You're just looking for a bank account to paper over your gaps." My answer's no. I'm not funding a stage set for a play where I don't even have a speaking part. You earn real respect through character, not by raiding my savings. "But Mom, you've got the money sitting in that account. This is my career," he nearly yelled. "No, Lucas. This is your ego. In my line of work, we call an investment with no moral return a total write-off. And I already wrote you off a while ago." I set the phone down, calm and steady. My heart didn't even race. It wasn't revenge, it was just straight-up consequences. Justice started right then. 2 days later, instead of an apology, I got a chilly email with a crisp PDF attached. Sender Sarah, the lawyer's daughter, and Lucas's fiancée. The title read, "Guidelines and Conduct Protocol for the Wedding Events." I opened it and started reading. It was a bullet point list that stripped away every ounce of dignity. "Dear Mrs. Harper, to ensure a cohesive image, please observe the following stick to soft pastel colors only. Do not mention your years as a forensic accountant. It would be better to introduce yourself as retired private consultant. During formal photos, please stay in the background so the Caldwell family remains the focus. We'd prefer to avoid awkward questions about your professional background that don't align with our social standing." I went through every line with the same sharp eye I used to use spotting massive tax fraud back in the day. These people didn't want me there. They wanted a prop, a silent extra to fill the embarrassing holes in their polished success story. Lucas had even hidden that his big promotion hinged directly on that cash. Memories flooded in. 20 years ago, I'd stay up until 2 in the morning, poring over balance sheets just to pay for his expensive law school. I remembered wearing the same old winter boots a third season, so he could have the designer clothes his pride demanded. And now he was ashamed of the very hands that had earned every dollar for his climb. I printed the document immediately. It was proof of my son's moral bankruptcy. Sarah had put her arrogance in writing. I knew then this wasn't a celebration of love, it was an attempt to erase who I was. I wasn't about to stay quiet and help them scam their own blood. My dignity wasn't negotiable. A sharp knock hit my apartment door in the back bay. Lucas stood there in a sharp suit, but his face was pale, and the bags under his eyes screamed sleepless nights. He didn't look like a joyful groom. He looked like a desperate employee whose career was circling the drain. "Mom, we need to talk. Right now," he said, trying to push past me into the hall. I stayed planted in the doorway like a stone wall, arms crossed tight. "I already said everything, Lucas. Office hours for baseless demands are closed." I told him, my voice as cold as a New England pond in November. "Please just listen." He was practically begging now. "Sarah's dad will cancel the whole wedding and pull the partner offer if we don't wire our share by Friday. He thinks we're loaded, Mom. If you don't step up, I'll look like a total fraud in front of Boston's legal crowd. My entire future rides on this money." I looked at him with a mix of horror and pity. "But you are a fraud, Lucas. You sold them a fairy tale where I'm the rich matriarch, all to smooth your way into that firm you clearly aren't ready for on merit. You mortgaged my life for your dreams without ever asking me. That's betraying your own mother. What's so wrong with polishing the truth a little?" He exploded in frustration. "You're sitting on your savings in this old place while I'm trying to build something bigger. You're being so selfish." "I'm sitting on a lifetime of honest work," I corrected him quietly. "You didn't choose Sarah for her heart. You chose her for her dad's firm. And now you expect me to foot the bill for your vanity. Go home, Lucas. I have an appointment at the lawyer's office today. I'm changing my will. Everything's going into a foundation for kids who actually need help. You burned your last bridge with me." He stared at me in shock, but I closed the door without another word. The hurt was real, but the decision was rock solid. The next morning, I sat in my attorney's office near Boston Common. The papers for the notarized $100,000 gift promise I'd once made Lucas for his career startup lay on the desk. "Helga, are you absolutely sure?" my lawyer asked, pushing up his glasses. "This is a binding notarized pledge. Revoking it for gross ingratitude requires proving something pretty severe. U.S. law protects the recipient strongly here. A simple fight usually isn't enough." "David, that promise was built on mutual respect, and Lucas stomped all over it," I said, sliding Sarah's email across the table. "Read this. They tried to contractually force me to deny my identity and my entire career just to scam financial perks. That's a deep insult and a direct attack on my dignity." He publicly erased me and treated me like an ATM while hiding my existence from his new family. This is textbook gross ingratitude. David read it in silence, his face darkening. "This is outrageous. Forcing someone to disown their background to land a prestige partnership is a serious moral failure. We'll pursue the revocation. It'll take a process, but with this evidence, we've got a strong case. He has no claim on your money as long as he treats you like this." "Good," I said, signing the official letter with a steady hand. "I'm closing that account today. Not out of blind spite, but because a balance sheet full of nothing but moral debts needs to be liquidated. I'm done being blackmailed." Afterward, I walked through the public garden. A lightness I hadn't felt in years washed over me. I wasn't the pitiful mom waiting by the phone anymore. I was Helga Harper. Again, a woman who knew her worth. Truth felt like fresh air after being trapped in a stuffy basement. I was finally free. Despite the tension, I got a formal invite to a get-to-know-you dinner. The Caldwells, Sarah's parents, wanted to meet the mysterious mother at last. I knew Lucas had begged them to let me come so he could keep up appearances and save his shot at the family firm. I decided to accept, but not as the meek background player they expected. I showed up right on time in a simple dark blue suit. The Caldwells looked stiff, their faces like old porcelain. You could feel the superiority dripping from every word. "Ah, Mrs. Harper," Mr. Caldwell said condescendingly. "Lucas mentioned your extensive real estate holdings. We plan to bring him on as partner after the wedding, but of course that assumes a certain family financial standing to maintain our level." I sat down calmly and looked him straight in the eye. I'm afraid my son stretched the truth a bit too far. I'm not a real estate tycoon. I'm a retired forensic accountant. I spent my life spotting lies in the books, and I'm sorry to say, I'm finding quite a few right here at this table. The silence that dropped was so thick, you could hear distant silverware clinking in the kitchen. Sarah turned beet red, while Lucas tried desperately to swallow his wine without choking. I received Sarah's little list of conduct rules. I continued evenly laying the printed pages on the table, a masterpiece of arrogance. I won't be attending the wedding, and I've revoked the $100,000 gift promise on grounds of gross ingratitude. In this country, we value honesty, Mr. Caldwell. You might want to keep that in mind when choosing partners for your firm. A lawyer who disowns his own mother will lie to his clients, too. I stood up, left $50 for my water on the table, and walked out with my head high. I'd spoken the truth, the sharpest weapon there is. My conscience was crystal clear while their house of cards collapsed behind me. Lucas chased me out onto the street as I flagged a cab. His face was twisted with rage and fear. You ruined everything. Sarah's dad just told me in the restaurant the partnership's off. I'm finished. No firm, no future, and probably no fiancé soon. How could you do this to me? I looked at my son with a calm that only made him angrier. No, Lucas. I didn't ruin it. Your addiction to a status you never earned did. You tried to use me as collateral for your career. You hoped I'd sacrifice my self-respect so you could sit pretty in some upscale office. But I'm not a pawn in your web of lies. You steered yourself into this mess. I hate you for being so cold-blooded, he shouted right there on the busy sidewalk. You're not a mother. You're a damn calculator with no heart. I didn't even flinch. Hate takes a lot of energy, Lucas. Energy I just don't have for you anymore. All I feel now is a clear, empty space. You promised Sarah I'd deliver the money because you assumed I had no choice but to love you unconditionally. But love without respect is a dangerous fantasy. You need to tell Sarah the full truth now that you've got nothing but your pride and a mother who won't sell herself out. That's the only shot you have left at becoming a real man and finally taking responsibility. I got in the cab and gave the driver my address. As the city lights blurred past, I thought about fairness. It wasn't cruel to let Lucas feel the weight of his choices. It would have been cruel to let him keep building his life on rotten lies and denial. I felt lonely, but it was a clean, honest loneliness I could live with. I hadn't lost my son. I'd buried the lie that had stood between us. Over the next 3 weeks, something I never saw coming happened. Sarah's mother, Mrs. Caldwell, came to see me in person. She showed up unannounced and seemed far more human than at that disastrous dinner. We met at a quiet cafe near the Charles River. I wanted to apologize to you sincerely, she started softly. I only read Sarah's list after that awful dinner. I had no idea about those instructions. My husband is big on tradition, but what my daughter wrote is inexcusable. After Lucas admitted to the revoked gift, my husband cut off any further support for Sarah. We told her she'll have to support herself if she marries this man. I was surprised. That's a very firm stand from your family. I respect the clarity. She sighed deeply. Sarah's pregnant Helga, the shock of her father's anger, and the sudden loss of security sent her into a real crisis. She reread her own emails and was horrified at herself. She realized she's now in the exact same spot as Lucas, cut off by her father and without the firm's safety net. She lost everything she thought mattered, the status, the financial cushion. He lost the most important thing because he never really had it, I said seriously. Character. Sarah, feeling the consequences of her arrogance, is necessary for her growth. Pride goes before a fall, as they say. Now we'll see if her love for Lucas is real or just built on material expectations. You're a very firm woman, almost harsh. No, I replied gently. I'm a fair woman. In a world full of fake fronts, raw truth often looks like cruelty. But it's the only cure for arrogance. I won't bail Lucas out with money that would just teach him he can buy his way out of any lie. He has to learn to stand on his own and take responsibility for Sarah and the baby. That's the real test. Mrs. Caldwell nodded slowly. We both understood this process was unavoidable. The wedding day was a bright Saturday. I didn't spend it crying. I went to the opera house and saw Mozart's The Magic Flute, a story about trials and virtue. As the music swelled, I reflected on what it really means to be a mother. Sometimes real love means letting your child feel the sting of reality so they can actually grow. It was freeing for both of us. After the show, I turned my phone back on. Since I still followed Sarah on social media, I saw a photo she'd posted on her now private profile. It showed the two of them outside a small stone church in the countryside. No fancy carriage, no grand estates, no big-shot guests from the firm. Lucas looked pale, but for the first time in years, his eyes didn't have that desperate flicker for approval, just a quiet, honest acceptance of where he was. He held Sarah's hand tight. A huge wave of relief washed over me. Justice hadn't come through some dramatic disaster. It arrived in the gentle collapse of an illusion. Lucas would now walk the harder path without his father-in-law's help. He still had his law license, but his name no longer carried weight in Boston's elite circles. I went to my desk and wrote my son a letter. Dear Lucas, today your life as a real adult begins. You're starting without my money, without any inheritance, and without the fake shine of that partnership, but with a real chance at total honesty. If you ever get to the point where you can see me as your mom, again, not as a cash machine, my door is open. But don't expect handouts. Expect an honest talk over a cup of coffee. I wish you the strength to face the plain truth and take care of your new family. Congratulations on your marriage. Your mother, Helga. I sealed the envelope and dropped it in the mailbox. I'd done my part not as a victim, but as a woman who'd saved her own dignity. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. The storm was finally over. A year flew by. I used the time for myself. I traveled to the Pacific Northwest and hiked in Tuscany. I met people who valued my mind, not my bank balance. It was a season of inner housekeeping where I finally let go of the heavy guilt that comes with motherhood. I felt more alive than ever. Lucas didn't reach out that year. I heard through the grapevine that he hadn't landed a job at any big Boston firm. His reputation took a hit after the blow-up with the Caldwells. He'd moved to a smaller city nearby, working as a regular associate in a modest tax firm. It was a big step down for someone who'd been gunning for partner. He was now handling basic bookkeeping and tax returns miles away from the glossy downtown offices. It was a tough year, cramped apartment overtime, and constant money worries. But I stayed firm. He had to fight this battle alone. You can't force someone to grow, you can only give them the space to do it. One rainy Tuesday in November, my landline rang. It was a number from out of town. I answered, and it was Sarah on the other end. Her voice sounded softer, tired, stripped of the old superiority. Helga, I wanted to tell you we had a baby girl 2 days ago. We named her Helga, Lucas insisted. He said it's the only thing he can give you right now, real respect. I caught my breath. My heart pounded in my throat. Helga, I repeated softly, voice shaking. Yes, Sarah said, fighting back tears. Lucas is working really hard at the firm. He doesn't make much and we have to stretch every dollar, but he's a completely different person now. He's still so ashamed about that dinner and everything he put you through. He's scared to call you because he thinks he destroyed your trust forever. He believes he doesn't deserve to be your son anymore. Sarah, I said firmly, actions matter more than shame in the final tally. If Lucas has learned what real work feels like, that's a solid start. Bring little Helga over on Sunday. I'll bake an apple pie. Sunday was sunny. My apartment smelled of cinnamon almonds and fresh apples. I'd set the table with my best linen cloth. When the doorbell rang at 3 o'clock, I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and opened the door. There they were. Lucas looked slimmer in the face, dressed in simple clothes with no expensive watch on his wrist. But his eyes held a steadiness I'd never seen before, a gaze that was finally solid and genuine. Sarah held a warm little bundle in her arms. She looked worn out from the past year's struggles, but the cold Caldwell mask was gone for good. She met my eyes directly. There were no big dramatic scenes that wasn't our style. We kept things proper, but our hearts were open. "Come on in," I said, simply stepping aside to let them through. Lucas stopped right in front of me. "Mom, thank you for that letter back then. It took almost a year of hard work before I really understood every word. I was a fool. I almost traded you away for an illusion. I'm ashamed of what I asked you for. I don't want a partnership anymore. I just want to be your son again. Working with numbers every day showed me how much you sacrificed for me." "Sit down, Lucas," I said, with warm, motherly softness. "The pie needs another 5 minutes to rest. We've got time, plenty of time for a fresh start." I looked at the sleeping baby. Little Helga was like a blank page, pure and full of possibility. I knew I'd done the right thing. If I'd paid that deposit and left the gift promise intact, Lucas would still be chained to his lies today, and Sarah would be miserable in a gilded cage. Now they were a real family, standing on solid ground. "Tell me about your work up there, Lucas," I said as I cut the first slices of pie. "It's tough, Mom. But you were right. Numbers don't lie. There's a good feeling at the end of the day, knowing what you honestly accomplished. I learned a lot from you." I smiled. Justice had been served, life's balance sheet was even, and forgiveness had found its place. That apple pie tasted better than any fancy feast ever could. We were finally home. Not everyone who walks away does so because they stopped caring. Sometimes they just refuse to keep being taken for granted. Some relationships don't break because of money, but because people start treating each other like tools. Reputation can be borrowed, but real value cannot. A lie told to save face is often the first brick in a house built on falsehood. And some lessons no one can teach you. You only understand them after you've paid the price.